Yo, what is going on, beautiful people? It is a beautiful day. What is it? Wednesday? Tuesday? It's a Tuesday. Sheesh, happy Tuesday to you. I swear, when you get into like a flow state, all these days kind of blend together. But today's video is gonna be a Q&A. I posted a Q&A thing on my Instagram, got a bunch of questions, and instead of doing like 30 different stories, I figured I compile it into a YouTube video for you guys to reference. Be covering a lot of commonly asked questions because the same types of questions pop up, especially in the comment section. So this should give you some clarity as like my split, some of my favorite exercises, some life lessons, book recommendations, all that jazz. So stay tuned. We're also gonna hit the hill. I wanted to start the video answering a couple questions, then I'll hit a little warm up, head to the hill, get some conditioning in, but stay tuned, answer some questions, give you guys some value, and let's just jump right into it. So the first question, what do I think about endurance running for cardio? So when it comes to cardio, like I mentioned, I'm about to hit the hill here shortly. When it comes to cardio, I don't do anything over than a mile, right? I firmly believe in building your engine. I don't think that cardio is pointless. I choose to build my engine with hill sprints, 100 meter, 200 meter, 400 meter, a mile long run, very occasionally 2 mile long runs. I don't go beyond that because then it starts to get misaligned with what my training goals are. I train for capability, that's a broad term, but primarily strength, explosiveness, athleticism, right? And when you get to really long distances, especially on a frequent basis, you start to take away from that, right? It starts to impact your strength training. It starts to impact, just slowly draining your CNS, lots of pounding and impact on my ankles and on my knees, which I need them to be fresh, especially for plyometrics, power cleans, heavy squats, right? So it's kind of like I would be dipping into a whole different bucket if I did some like serious endurance cardio, and I kind of be like switching lanes with my training. So I'll sprinkle it in. Like I'll do a mile run maybe twice a week, but that's more either a recovery run or I'm really pushing the pace, right? Other than that, stay below a mile because I can still build my engine efficiently without doing miles and miles, and taxing the system and taking away and straying away from my main goal. Hopefully that answers your question. I believe in endurance training, just not in the traditional sense of like, go run 5 miles. I like to do hills, sprints, and then like miles for pace. So the next question would be, what's the main category of your movements? How do you split them to still recover? So I think he's trying to ask, what's my split? How do I break up movements to stay fresh? And if you guys follow me on Instagram, I've touched on this a couple times. If you look at the first step to training athletically, I think that'll give you some clarity as well, and especially the warrior versus monk intention. Those are on my YouTube channel, but basically my current split is upper, lower, full body with 3 days of conditioning in there, hill sprints, 400 meter runs, and a mile. And the conditioning days will kind of switch and vary as I progress further into the split. The split is seasonal. What is not seasonal is the framework behind it. Because just a few months ago, I was running upper, lower with less running, but the framework within each training day remains the same. It's a balance of warrior and monk. Warrior meaning max output, max intensity, compounds, plyometrics, nervous system work like overcoming ISOs, complemented with monk work, which is like slow, controlled, in tune, more maintenance work to take care of the vehicle, such as mobility, longer duration isometrics, and things of that nature. This is the case because over my many years of training, playing Division II football, having experience with rehab work, getting into yoga, I've come to learn there's no single style of training that is above all the other ones. Rather, it's a combination, like a gathering of like the infinity stones, right? And so what I found is that I'm able to build my engine, I'm able to build my strength, my explosiveness with these warrior-focused movements, and then I'm able to complement that. I'm able to keep my body in the game for the long haul, have my body stay fresh with the monk movements. So it's this blend of Olympic lifts, of plyometrics, of heavy compounds to build my horsepower, to build just my overall strength and power. But then it's also complemented with mobility work, with longer duration ISOs to keep my body fresh from the demanding work so that I'm not only just strong and powerful, but I'm also durable and resilient. The split itself doesn't matter as much as long as you're dosing things appropriately. So I started with upper lower, where the first 2 upper lowers were more warrior focused. The next 2 were more monk focused. Now I do upper, lower, full body, where it's pretty much an equal blend of warrior and monk within each. And what I don't cover in the 2 upper and lower days, I'm covering in the full body day. So hopefully that gives you some clarity. Don't worry so much about the split and more so about the framework and what you're accomplishing within each workout. All right, so next question, what are my essential and top 10 favorite upper body exercises? You're gonna be disappointed with this because you guys might be expecting some crazy like, oh, the rotational coil landmine press and like some freaky shit like that. And while that is a fire exercise and there are some crazy movements out there, I'm a firm believer that none of the crazy movements matter until you have a strong foundation developed. And what is that strong foundation going to consist of? First and foremost, forget 10 exercises. If I only had 2, it would be pull-ups and dips. Pull-ups and dips set the foundation. But if I had to go through 10, and not in any order, pull-ups, dips, overhead press, we're gonna focus on movements that make other movements easier, right? So pull-ups and dips transfer to every pulling movement, every pressing movement. Overhead press is gonna transfer to every pressing movement. We can do Pendlay rows, and makes all of your pulling movements more explosive. Obviously need some bis and tris, so we'll do curls, some sort of tricep extension, Pendlay rows, bis, tris, that makes 6. So more shoulder love. I'll do a lateral raise iso for 7. I'll do an inverted row iso for 8, because I always kind of struggle with that upper back. Here's the thing about pressing movements, you need a strong foundation. I would constantly tweak the muscles in my scapula with heavy pressing movements, especially towards the end of my workout when I'll get fatigued. That's because you need a solid foundation. You can't fire a cannon out of a canoe. The whole fucking boat's gonna go. You need a strong foundation. That inverted row helped me get right. Is that 8? I believe it's 8. I'll give you 11 just in case I miss one. So for 9 and 10, I'm gonna come back to that coil press just because it's such a good move to coordinate the upper body. So I'll do the landmine coil press. For movement 10, give me flat bench. Although you get pretty much all the work you need pressing wise from dips and overhead press, I just love flat bench. I think everybody loves flat bench. For 11, just based on the season that I'm currently in, landmine rotations. If you guys follow me on my story, it's kind of like you're just wielding the landmine back and forth, and in doing so, whether you do it straight arm or with your arms kind of like locked in here, you're just really getting in your shoulders, your lats, your entire core, your obliques, and you're having to coordinate your whole body in like this super functional manner. And so currently, based on the season I'm in, that'll be the last one. Don't focus too much on the exercises, rather what you're getting out of them. And I could even, like I said, dumb this list down to 2 movements, pull-ups and dips. If I only had those 2 for the rest of my life, upper body, I would be just fine. And then a follow-up question to that would be, if you could only do 1 upper body workout for the rest of your life, what would it look like? Again, I would say to not focus so much on the workout, because if you want me to tell you a workout so that you can just copy and paste it, that'll help you for 1 single day, but then you won't understand the framework and be able to apply it on your own. So I'm just gonna walk you through the upper body workout that I did yesterday, right? And focus on the framework rather than copy and pasting it. And this framework can be applied to lower body as well. So first and foremost, we're getting activation, we're getting blood flow. I worked some banded isometrics, worked in some external rotation, right? Get things warm, get the shoulders warm. I worked in an inverted row isometric. So the beginning portion, just lower intensity isometrics to get blood flow, to get activation. I know for this upper body day, I'm gonna start with a pressing movement. So I wanna make sure I'm setting that foundation. Like I said, you can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe. So I'm working the inverted row iso to prepare my body for that pressing move. But so far, isometrics just for blood flow and activation. Then the next step for every workout is gonna be nervous system activation. This could be a plyometric, this could be an overcoming iso, and you pretty much have to pick your poison based on what the workout is you're trying to do. I mentioned for you guys, I'm starting this session off with a bench press. So after I get activation with the isos, I'm gonna do a biomechanically similar overcoming iso, AKA overcoming iso bench press. It sounds super fancy, but it's like, dude, if I'm gonna bench, overcoming iso bench press. If I'm gonna squat, overcoming iso squat. And so this is just maximum intent pressing into the bar, into an immovable object. This fully recruits all the muscle fibers for the bench press that I need. It's gonna ramp my CNS all the way up because of that max intention that I'm trying to produce. And it's gonna get me ready to actually move some heavy weight with intent. Because someone that goes through the motions versus someone that actually is putting their all into the intention, they're gonna get drastically different results. So far, blood flow and activation with the isos, nervous system activation with an overcoming iso or a plyometric. Now we get into the real work. I did some pause bench press, supersetted with plyo push-ups. If you're an OG, you know I love contrast training. This is what really converts your strength into speed and explosiveness. So with that pause bench, plyo push-up, that's kind of like the first block. Then the second block, it's gonna be some heavy posterior work, supersetted with weightless posterior work, just as another contrast set. For me, I did some landmine rotations with my arms more in close to my body to emphasize my lats more. Did those with some pretty serious weight, supersetted with chin-ups. So we're converting this rotational strength and power into speed with the chin-ups, focusing on just explosive intent. So that's kind of the first block of bench, plyo push-ups. Second block, any posterior work, contrast set. And then once you get that main output out of the way, you don't want to continue to tax your central nervous system. That's like the warrior work. Now we can do the monk work. I'm referencing a piece earlier in the video. Hopefully this is kind of all coming full circle. So blood flow, muscular activation with some isometrics, nervous system activation with an overcoming iso or a plyo. Then your main grunt work for the upper day is gonna be 2 contrast sets, one for the anterior, one for the posterior, super simple. Now we're getting into some maintenance work. Again, just to make it super dumb simple, maintenance work for the anterior and maintenance work for the posterior. What's that gonna look like? Deficit push-up iso. It's a long duration iso in a lengthened position with the pecs and the front delts. And I'm chasing the shake here. I'm trying to just get equal activation, see where I might be overcompensating in certain areas, and just overall flush the system with blood flow. Isos were a huge factor in helping me recover from my knee surgery. And so I've just applied them in all of the areas and not just my legs, and they've worked tremendously for my upper body. After the deficit push-up iso, I do a pull-up iso. Longer duration isos are gonna help reinforce these positions. They're gonna help with tendon strength. They're gonna help with resilience. They're gonna help get blood flow. And so these are all great things to do after such high intensity output, just so that your body isn't so beat up afterward. So once we've gotten activation with the isos, activated the central nervous system with the overcoming iso and plyometric, did our main grunt work with the contrast training, and then we supported it with some maintenance work, we can pretty much just call it there, depending on the intensity we used, or do some accessory work like some bis and tris, some additional core. From there, it doesn't really matter. You can kind of pick your poison, but that same framework can be applied to lower days, to chest days, to back days. So focus on the framework rather than the actual details. So those are the first couple questions. I'm gonna get warmed up, go hit the hill, and I'll answer the rest of the questions over at the hill. All right, I figured I'd take you guys through a little warm-up action for the hills. And if you've been following me, you know that every warm-up that I do for lower body, running, sprinting, etc., is gonna be the banded isos. The banded isos paired with some plyometrics. And that kind of bridges into the next question. Someone asked, how do you regress plyos when recovering from an ACL surgery, knee surgery, injury, etc.? And that's a great question, because I think a lot of people jump into plyos too soon. And my first response to that question is, if you haven't mastered the banded isos, meaning if you haven't done the banded isometrics for 4 to 5 times a week for 2, even 3 months, 2 months minimum, and you haven't gotten really efficient at these, don't even worry about regressing the plyos. But once you have done the banded isos for 4 to 5 times a week, consistently, proper intent, doing it right for at least 2 months, you can begin to regress plyos. And a good example would simply be only focusing on the eccentric portion of the plyo. Because if you think of a plyometric, it's like a jump. And I'll give you guys a reactive vert example at like 20%. So a reactive vert is like you snap down and then jump up, right? When you're regressing plyos to accommodate your injury, whether it's a surgery recovery, whatever, just focus on the snap down. Just focus on absorbing force on both legs, on one leg. If you have like a box, instead of doing the plyos where like you drop off the box and then jump afterward, just focus on dropping off the box and absorbing the force on one leg, on the other. Once you get really efficient at just absorbing the force, sticking the landing without like, right? You stick the landing solid, you're on the ball of your foot, you're not like trying to catch balance, and that's efficient on both legs, right? As good as it can be, assuming depending on like your timeline and your injury. That's when you can begin to introduce the second portion of the plyometric, go from just absorbing to also producing force. So first response to that question, banded isos. Second response, just focus on absorbing the force. And then how did I learn about how to program for athleticism and removing imbalances? So programming for athleticism and removing imbalances pretty much go hand in hand. What I would say for athleticism is that obviously I played sports my whole life, and growing up through childhood sports, I worked with different speed coaches, agility coaches, different strength programs, whatever. At the high school level, we had strength and conditioning coaches. At the college level, strength and conditioning coaches as well. And obviously along that whole journey, doing a lot of self-study, right? Whether through YouTube, experimenting on my own, trying different workouts that I saw. So first and foremost, experience, self-education, whatever you want to call it, just being an athlete. Then second would be overcoming injuries. So I had a torn hamstring and I also got knee surgery. And in facing those, in order for me to get back to where I was and beyond, I had to get rid of imbalances and I had to rebuild my athleticism from the ground up, from ground zero, and for knee surgery, even like below ground zero. And I didn't just figure that out entirely on my own. I invested in a mentor, I invested in a coach. Shout out my guy, Matt, over at ACL Wonders. And he began just as a coach, as a mentor. As we grew closer, as my recovery progressed, he brought me onto his team where I was able to work inside the business with him, helping hundreds of clients, speak into probably thousands of different people, all experiencing different pains, aches, whatever in their lower body. And so I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot through that programming. And I learned a lot talking to a bunch of different people about their situations and helping them piece together the puzzle pieces. Because the more cases you're exposed to, the more of a well-rounded knowledge you have of how to like navigate out of that and still get to the same end goal, which is just ultimate capability. So between experience, investing in mentors, investing in myself, coaches, whatever. And then, I mean, I could tell you guys that like I majored in biology, but I didn't fucking learn shit about any of this stuff during that, so it doesn't even matter. But a combination of being an athlete my entire life, playing at a Division II level, having a bunch of different coaches for that, having to go through injuries, having to rebuild from injuries to where I am now, investing in the mentorship, investing in the coaches, helping a bunch of other people, seeing what they're dealing with and helping them navigate out of it, even though it's different than mine. All of this gave me a super wide scope of how to navigate injuries, imbalances, athleticism, the whole nine. But I'm gonna bang out these banded ISOs, hit the hill, and we got 2 more questions on the list. I'll keep you guys tuned. What up, gang? Made it to the hill. A little question before we jump into the workout. Top book recommendations. So I'll give you guys 2 book recommendations. I have formed like my own little library at this point, but if I were to pick 2 books for you guys to start with, the first one is What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. When you read this book, you'll understand that everything is dictated by your internal dialogue. Whether it's staying to a consistent workout routine, every time you have to hit the gym, is it, oh fuck, I have to hit the gym? Or is it, oh bet, I get to hit the gym, I'm excited for this? Sticking to a diet, is it, fuck, I hate eating clean, I'm not good at it? Or is, I love eating clean, it doesn't even feel like a diet, it just feels like how I eat. When you're thinking about a goal, is it, yeah, it'd be nice, but I really don't even think that I can even do it. I can't do that. Or is it, wow, that's so inspiring, I'm going to achieve that. Everything stems from your internal state and your internal dialogue. And that brings me to the second book, Happy Pocket Full of Money. So when I was in sales, I had a sales coach, mentor, he was a mentor beyond sales. He recommended Happy Pocket Full of Money, not because it's about money, not because it's about sales, but it's all about your mindset and coming from an abundant state. When you operate out of a place of abundance and you don't operate out of scarcity and everything flows from you positively, not that you're gonna be happy-go-lucky all the time, but when you're working on your inner state and you're mastering your inner state, how you talk to yourself, operating from a place of abundance and not scarcity, being goal-oriented, knowing how to think positively to achieve those goals, right? Everything else starts to fall in line. The act of working out is easy. The act of sticking to a diet, it's easy. The only things that make it difficult is human error in our internal dialogue and in our inner state. These 2 books are 2 amazing places to start. I would recommend them to everyone. I bought Happy Pocket Full of Money for my mom. I gave it to like my best friend. I gave it to my girlfriend. I don't think she's reading it, but she should read it. I recommend it for y'all as well. Those are my 2 book recommendations. Just a little warm-up run. I'm gonna capture the bulk of my workout on my phone. I get some clips there. So last question for y'all is the biggest lesson I've learned in 2026. And building off of the book recommendations, it's that everything flows from your internal state, right? Everyone thinks that it's the next workout split. Everyone thinks that it's the next diet routine. Everyone wishes they could fast forward to their goals. Guys, the secret to everything is mastering your internal state. We can't control anything in this world. Everything that is internally is showing outwardly. When you look at a fat person, the obvious part is that they're fat. What you don't see is that on the inside, they're undisciplined, they're inconsistent, they have an unhealthy relationship with food. They view the gym as a chore rather than a privilege. A bunch of other stuff going on. When you look at a fit person, the obvious part is that they're fit, they have a 6-pack. What's going on internally to cause that? They're disciplined, they're consistent, they have a healthy relationship with food, they view the gym as a privilege rather than a chore. And when you start to understand and see how your internal state impacts everything around you, you realize it's not just about the body when it comes to capability. In order to have the most physically capable body, you need a capable mind, you need a strong mind, you need to work on your inner state and on yourself. That's the biggest lesson of 2026. Master the internal state, everything else will fall into line. That's gonna wrap up the Q&A video. I'm gonna get to this hill workout. Hopefully you guys got some value. If you did, like, subscribe, the whole 9. Let me know if you have any other questions in the comments below. I'll put my Instagram in the description as well. That's all I got for you guys. Peace, love, prosperity. I'll see you in the next one.